Hi, my name is Celie Stone. I'm a first-year doctoral student at Texas Tech University. I'm excited to be here with you today, although I wish we were getting to do this conference in person. To tell you the truth, this is my first submission to a conference, and it was accepted and asked to be a presentation. And so it was a great honor to get to do this for you today. Well, let me get my screen share going and I'll start. Okay, we're going to talk today about my project called A Foreign Exchange. International agricultural students deliver multicultural messages. As we all know, over the past several decades, it has become abundantly aware that cultural awareness is important, especially us as me as a future college teacher and those of you who are watching who are college professors. It's important that we embrace different cultures, and it also helps when we talk about other cultures and have inclusivity. So I'm going to get to the data and tell you a little bit about this course before I tell you specifically about the innovative idea itself. Across all disciplines, research has shown that college graduates need to be exposed to and experience international perspectives. This helps them understand connections of social, cultural, political, and economic integration. It also helps them to develop intercultural competence, global perspectives, and helps bridge the cultural gap, making students feel more accepted. So the course itself is called Agriculture and Society. It is a multicultural course credit at Texas Tech University offered by the Department of Agricultural Education and Communication. It's developed to examine the relationships between agriculture, society, and the environment. The course engages students in discussion, addressing emerging complex issues. It also addresses the American Association for Agricultural Education's National Research Agenda, Research Priority 7, question number 3. This course is offered to any student, majors or non-majors, and it's very discussion-based. And I will talk to you about the topics here in just a minute. Students enrolled in the course are already required to submit one-page personal reflections throughout the course. This would help us it would be an indicator that they are understanding the topics we're talking about. So here, let's get into the topics. Okay, one of the topics, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll just give you some examples. One of the topics is commercial versus family farming. And as you can see, I put some pictures up here. There's quite a big difference on someone in different cultures and how people not only farm, but raise livestock. And so what I loved about the course, and I was just a teaching assistant, but toward the end, I got to co-teach and teach quite a few lessons on my own. And it got to a point to where we're going to write a grant, and I'm going to try to make it to where we can offer this course as a dual credit class for ag teachers, secondary ag teachers, to offer this course to their students. And I'm very excited about that. So obviously some grant writing right now would be a good time-consuming effort, but maybe some time before we get to meet in person and do those kinds of things. But anyway, let me get it off the sidebar. Okay, so there were 197 students, in the class. And as we went through and we taught each topic, the really neat, interesting thing about the class is we offered both sides to issues. Global warming, obviously an extremely hot topic, literally. We talked about certain political differences and tried to be completely unbiased and offer different opinions. And it was really interesting to see. Obviously, as many of you are aware, agricultural students in general are probably lean to a more conservative side. So it was really fun to get to engage those students in other sides of the discussion. And then there were several students that were non-majors just taking the course as a multicultural credit. And so they got to hear the more, conservative side of things, as well as the side that they may have been aware of, coming from California or downtown Houston. It could be completely different than someone from West Texas and how they were raised and what their opinions may be. So this really did open up their minds to different perspectives. So I've got another topic with sustainability, and then water conservation and innovation, One of the topics that I got to actually teach on was animal rights versus animal welfare. And we talked about how the horse slaughter had stopped in America because of animal rights activists feeling that horse slaughter was cruel. Well, the implications of that turned out that people were letting horses starve to death because there was nowhere to go with those horses. So these were the kinds of topics that sparked discussion. Of course, GMOs was a big one too. Okay, so the innovative idea that came along, since the students already had to write one-page personal reflections, we decided to throw in international students within our department, and I believe that you could easily make this work if you didn't have access to many international students in your department. But I'll go into the idea. Okay, so to enhance the course, the instructor asked international graduate students to present addressing key issues pertaining to agriculture from their perspective of their culture. So presenters were encouraged to include favorite traditions. One of our presenters danced into the classroom in her native attire into music from her native country. So, of course, the early morning class, the students that were typically nodding off were, wakened by this and really enjoyed it. Okay, to give you a little bit more of a quantitative look at this innovative idea, there were 97 students enrolled in the course. They were asked to write a one-page personal reflection for each of 4 guest presenters, which, as I said, were international agricultural students. This resulted in 388 one-page reflections during the fall semester of 2019. Combined, the 4 reflection papers made up 40% of the course grade. I'm going to go ahead and read you some quotes from some of the students. Overall, I saw the country in a totally different point of view, which is why multicultural speakers always give me a new perspective on the world of agriculture. A few more quotes. Without them giving us a look into their home country, we may never have had any real firsthand perspectives on it. And another student said, my main takeaway from the presentation was the differences between Chinese and American educational systems and the effect those systems had on the type of learners they are producing. Our Chinese doctoral student really shocked the class by talking about how they studied for one test, and that test determined whether they were going to move on to college or not. And parents waited outside, prayed. It was a days long exam, and it was just really shocking. And that doctoral student actually did her research in our department on critical thinking because she was not introduced to critical thinking until she came to America to get a PhD. She was taught to not question the man. And so that was just really neat to get to hear her perspective, and the 97 personal reflection papers, all of them were just really surprised and just impacted by that difference because most people weren't aware. Just a little shout out. This is my daughter here feeding a goat. So I had to add that with this comment. Something that stood out to me the most was the fact that agricultural education is not taught in high schools. Being an ag kid myself, half of the classes I took in high school were ag classes. These were the classes I looked forward to the most every day. So I threw in the this year's state FFA officers getting crowned as officers. And I hate to say it's a sad day that they canceled the Texas State FFA convention. He was one of the students in that picture, is like a child to me. And he was really devastated that he wasn't going to get up and give his going away speech and all that. So I apologize for the sidebar again. Just had to put a little plug in for my people. Okay, another quote. My time during the lecture was much less spent learning things that seemed foreign to me, but spent instead reflecting on the perspectives that I have on poverty, infrastructure, and agriculture because of my experience as being a U.S. citizen. And last, the one thing that caught my attention the most was when he talked about the poverty. I think he said it perfectly when he said how in the U.S., people complain about equality and wealth, but there are places like Africa that make the U.S. look perfect. I think this is really humbling and something that a lot of people need to step back and see. I think if I were to go to Africa, it would completely change my outlook on life. That was a resounding theme with the papers. Most of the students were obviously enlightened, but they were also excited to travel. It was interesting how many papers I read that the students talked about how they would want to go to that particular place, but not only there, it just opened their mind up to other cultures in general. So I based this project or this presentation off of literature stating that having an international experience automatically makes you more culturally aware. And I just believe that this really helps provide evidence for that argument. And I see my little plug there. You just feel more connected. Those students felt more connected. So personal growth seemed to occur, breaking cultural assumptions, and students could become better citizens as a result of these international experiences. Advice to others. First off, I want to state that, especially if you do not have access to many international students, we had faculty who traveled through his research to an African country, and that faculty member was one of our presenters. So it doesn't have to be an international student, just someone who can give a really deep perspective agriculturally on the culture. My advice to others is preparing the presenters beforehand. Obviously, you want to make sure they talk about things that are interesting, and just like the dancing that captures the students' attention. But it's also important, especially for this course, to have them give, in the context of agriculture, what agriculture looks like, what the commodities in their country, how they're produced. So just being able to prepare the presenter, and that does take time, but laying out expectations, topics of interest. This was labor intensive for me, as this was a large class, but it was well worth it. And I cannot tell you, I didn't post anything on here about the review that we got at the end, the course evaluation. I apologize, because I'm not the instructor of record. At the time, I was just a teaching assistant, but it was really neat for me because even though, most students just either don't fill out the evaluation, or if they're going to say something, they're going to say something negative. Well, out of 97 students, we had 36 students write in a personal comment on the evaluation. One was negative, and it basically just said that the professor was a know-it-all, not me. But the rest of them really talked about how amazing the course was and how it changed their life, and how they wish they could have myself and the lead professor as a duo again. And I had, I think, 7 students call me out specifically as the teaching assistant and as a co-instructor for the course. So it was a very humbling experience. I learned a lot, and I really think that my research interests are now going to be geared more towards agricultural education and a multicultural aspect toward that. So the cost didn't cost anything at all. It was a big time investment as far as grading papers and preparing the presenters. And then I put on here internet access because we use Blackboard at Texas Tech, and we had the 97 students had to upload their presentations through Blackboard. But all in all, it was a great experience. I included my email on the first slide because since I don't get to speak to you in person, I wanted you to reach out to me and talk to me about anything that you want that has to do with this. I'm very excited to share, and I can't wait. I'm actually teaching this class online in both summer sessions and by myself, and again this fall with Dr. Ritz. So a big shout out to Dr. Ritz and to my department for plugging me into this project. Thank you.